Okay, guys, I'm just taking a break from peeling eggs. So let me start with the bad news. I got good advice from a friend online who recommended that since fresh eggs are so difficult to peel, they recommended that I after they boil, I let them sit in cold water for about 3 hours and then peel them. I don't know what I did wrong because these things are starting to look like Freddy Krueger's skin. I mean, the peeling is going awful. It's just coming apart. Every time I peel one, the skin, and I can still use these to can pickled eggs, but I have to keep them in the fridge. And I still have I boiled 2 dozen eggs. 2 dozen right here. It's still a full pot. The problem with that is I was really hoping that if I could get a perfect peel, if you can peel an egg without all these blemishes, it's better to use those for canning and then they could sit on the shelf. But if they have these blemishes where they tear into the actual meat of the egg, it can become poisonous if you put them on the shelf. I can put them in the fridge and the boys can eat them in a few weeks, but if you remember, I had mentioned a while back that I canned 3 kinds of pickled eggs. Not pickled, I canned them. So in here, you can see I still have a whole row of the soy sauce eggs. I have another row, half a row of the tomato sauce eggs, and a couple of the mustard eggs still back there. So the boys, I guess, have to start eating them a little more. But I still have a bunch of canned eggs in the fridge. And the last thing I kind of wanted to do was take up more fridge space with more pickled eggs. So that's okay. I went to the store today and I bought a few ingredients that I'm going to use and then save parts of it and try to plant my own. One of those things was something I was going to use with the eggs is garlic. So I bought 5 cloves of garlic. I just sat outside for like 2 hours while the Cold Springs King was grilling the steaks and I was peeling garlic. I saved the small, real thin pieces of garlic like that. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take each piece and plant them with the stem side down and the pointy side up. And then after several months, these are going to turn into full bulbs. So I've got about 10 of them in there. That store-bought item is going to hopefully turn into a homegrown item. So at least now I know where those garlics are coming from, who's touched them. Garlic doesn't worry me so much because the outside layers get peeled off anyway. But chemicals and hormones and stuff, I don't know what's going on with that. So the other thing I was going to put into the jars with these pickled eggs, the Freddy Krueger eggs, we'll call them Krueger eggs, was the jalapenos. The Cold Springs King loves jalapenos. And I bought these in a bag from the store. And there must have been about, I want to say 15 to 20 of them. So there's this container and there's another container in the fridge. Obviously, I'm not going to use all of them, but I'm going to use as much as I can, and I was going to try to put them in the jars with the pickled eggs. And, you know, this is the water. You can see the water's turning a little bit green. That's going to be some spicy water. I'm going to mix that water with apple cider vinegar and some sugar and the spices, and it's going to have a good kick, and some chopped onions, okay? There's a lot more here than I'm going to use for pickling, so I had the Croter Hunter pull out my dehydrator, and I'm going to dehydrate some of these jalapenos with something else. Here, I'll show you in a bit. So I'm going to dehydrate some jalapenos. I was going to use the garlic for cooking, and maybe some of the jalapenos for cooking this week. Who knows? But the cool thing is, while I was slicing up the jalapenos, I pulled out the seeds. I have used store-bought seeds before and it grew. I just didn't pursue it, and I only harvested maybe 2 jalapenos, but I didn't stay on it. That was years ago. So now that I'm a little more into this whole project, I'll be watching these and caring for these a lot more. And I actually got a lot of seeds. So I'm going to use these and plant these into my little cups soon, along with the garlic. I'll see what I can use for the pickling, but I staved the stumps of the jalapenos. I'm going to throw half of them into the compost box because I don't want it to be too spicy. When I take the rest of these, I'm going to throw them into my frozen bag in the freezer full of vegetables, and in a couple weeks I'm going to make another vegetable stock. Speaking of saving things and canning them, we also had a 9-pound pork roast that we cooked up last night. My son, the young crow hunter, had one of the big deep dish iron skillets. He put the 9-pound pork roast in it, spiced it up a little bit, and roasted it at 300 degrees for like 4 hours, 5 hours I think it was. It was great. And there was a lot of fat rendering, so I didn't can anything last night because the fat was still on the top of the juices. So we refrigerated it, we pulled the meat out, we refrigerated it, pulled it out this morning, and I got 2 jars here to show you, but I gotta be very careful because I don't wanna be shaking them around. Jar number 1 is the pork fat along with bacon fat that I've been saving next to the stove. I know you guys have seen me with my little fat jar next to the stove when I fried the bacon in my other video. What I did here is I heated it all up. I let all the junk settle to the bottom, the burnt pieces and the scrap meat chunks. And then while it was hot, I sanitized a new jar. I poured the clean grease from the top into the new jar until the chunks started kind of getting close to the edge, and I stopped. And so now this is still pretty hot, so I'm gonna put it down. It's just like, but that's gonna solidify, and it's gonna be basically clean pork lard for cooking in the future. Now the juices underneath the fat, when you refrigerate it, the cat is having his zoomies moment, so if you hear him, don't mind the cat. Now, here is the juice rendering. Here's the funny thing about the juices of a pork. It turns into a gelatinous mess later. And I don't like doing this so much because it looks kind of weird. If you look at it, there's like 3 layers. The big juice layers, this is the pork rendering that I'm gonna use for future cooking, but there's also a lot of meat residue. It's not part of the meat, but it's like a little solid chunks so tiny that they float up to the top. And then there's a small layer of fat that I missed. You know, you can't get all the fat off. But the nice thing is when this thing cools, this will turn to gel and the fat on top will seal it. And I don't mind the stuff on top because I know it's kind of necessary, but you kind of have to scrape that off later. At least I want to. You don't have to, but if you do, if I heat that up again someday, I'm going to scrape that off and use the gelatinous stuff underneath to do whatever I need to do with cooking. As for these, I'll do these. My problem with these eggs, you know what? Maybe I can make them a gift for somebody. But I don't want to give somebody eggs that looks like this, because when I can stuff, when I make stuff, and especially if I give it as a gift to somebody, I want it to look nice. I want it to be beautiful. You know, everything you do, you want it to be pleasing and glorious. You give all glory to God. And if it looks kind of mediocre and unappetizing, that's not giving glory to God to me. So, I don't know, maybe I'll give it to my friend that's a little more forgiving. He's the one that got me into chickens. So, I'm going to show you one last thing that has to do with dehydrating. 3 weeks ago, we went to a Vietnamese restaurant, and with the Vietnamese soup, they always give us a sprig of mint. I don't put mint in my Vietnamese soup. I just never grew up eating mint in it. But I saved it. I wrapped it up in a napkin. My husband thought I was nuts, and I brought it home. I stuck it in a jar and filled it with water, And after a couple weeks, it sprouted roots. And then the roots got to be about 2 or 3 inches long. And I had to pull it out because otherwise it would just start growing in the jar. And I went ahead and I took the mint and I put it in a pot with soil. And I'm so surprised at how well, I'm sorry to swing you around, I'm so surprised at how well this thing is growing. It's not just growing, it's blooming flowers. Look at this thing. This is my mint. And look at these flowers on top. And the leaves down here are growing so well. And it took root in the soil so nicely, and it's very healthy. It's right here in the sunlight. What I'm going to do is I'm going to trim off these really big healthy leaves soon and give them a little rinse. I'm going to throw those into the dehydrator, and then later on I'm going to mix them with baking soda and use that as a natural toothpaste. See, toothpaste doesn't necessarily need paste. You just need baking soda because it's an abrasive and it'll help scrape off the plaque, and the mint just kind of makes a fresh taste. So that's what I'm going to do with that thing. So that's from a restaurant, not the store, but I just can't believe how well, I mean, this thing was just sitting on a plate for hours and then wrapped in a napkin and in my purse on the way home, and it made it. What a great story of survival. Another store-bought item that I'm reconstituting, I guess is the word, is celery. I did an experiment where I chopped up a celery, I saved the stump, and I planted it. So help me out here. Am I pointing you in the right direction? I am. That is the celery that I planted the stump from the store into some dirt, and now it's sprouting and it's actually looking like celery. And down out of the center you can see where fresh celery root is starting to take place. And it's turning out great. One more thing that I bought from the store that is growing really well is butternut squash. We bought one butternut squash about 4 weeks ago, and when I chopped it up, I scraped out all the seeds. I put them in a jar and let them dry out in the fridge a little bit, and then I put them in a little Ziploc bag. When I got some wonderful tomato seeds from a good friend of mine, I love her. She sent me some beautiful tomato seeds, and I didn't know if I was doing it right, but they started to sprout. I also planted some of those butternut squash seeds. I'm getting all excited. So let me show you what these, and I hope I point you in the right direction. So this plant right here, am I pointing you there? Yes, this one right here. This is from the butternut squash. And then this one right next to it, its little neighbor. Am I pointing you? Oh, you're too far over. This is part of the tomatoes that my beautiful friend Teresa sent me. And I have this whole army of cups that I started planting all this stuff in right by the window, all the way over here. Now these two tall sprigs you see right here and here, this was my first experiment with garlic. Those are garlics. Can I get you close enough to see? There's the garlic clove. And it starts sprouting up this way. And then after a while, it'll get healthier roots. And the nice thing about using those cheap foam cups is I don't have to dig in the cup later on and dig the little sprout out. You're going over the eggs real quick. I don't have to dig anything out and disrupt the roots. I just tear the foam apart and then plant it right back into the next pot. So that's the plan. Dehydrating some stuff, canning some stuff, peeling. I'm gonna be peeling eggs after this, so I guess in a way I'm kind of stalling here, but I don't know. I appreciate the advice, sister. My friend San Fran Cook. San Fran Cook, I appreciate the advice, but this is what I'm dealing with right now. Just tediously trying to peel this, and it's not coming apart. Well, it's coming apart, but the whole egg's coming apart. The shell in it's just I'm sorry, but maybe I did something wrong. So the trials continue. I'm going to collect 2 more dozen eggs. I'm going to let them sit in the fridge for another 3, maybe 4 weeks. Next time I boil them, I'm going to do a straight boil and cool them off right away and peel them right away and see what happens then. So in the meantime, if anybody wants some Freddy Krueger eggs, maybe that's why we'll make them spicy, because they're ugly, they'll be spicy, just like Freddy Krueger. If you don't know who Freddy Krueger is, then just never mind. So that's my plan. Buy it from the store, reconstitute it, make it homegrown, and if you make it yourself, you make it your home. Thanks you guys for listening. I hope if you have any advice, I am very happy to take any advice. Even if I don't do it right, I'm gonna try it. So see how it works. But San Fran Cook, I love you. Thank you for your little advice on the eggs, and we'll see. But in all fairness, I mean, she didn't send it to me. I watched her video and I made a comment that I was gonna try it, and I did. And we're gonna just finish peeling these eggs and get on with the night. So thanks you guys, and hopefully next time I'll have something prettier to show you. Take care.